Okay, so hopefully understandably, I couldn't talk about anything except Unohana and Kenny last video, so let's discuss some of the other developments that were happening at the same time up in the Soul King's palace, or more specifically, within the individual palaces of Squad Zero members. We left Ichigo in the healing hot springs, and they've done wonders for both him and Renji and their recoveries, to the point that they're ready to head to the next palace already. Byakuya is apparently not ready to move on yet, which isn't surprising since, you know, the man was super dead from where I was sitting. Rukia also is apparently still being healed, but I love this because it gives Ichigo and Renji some time to reignite their rivalry in some fun ways. Their interactions are great, and I love that it's circling back to the early rivalry between them, after Renji has spent so long just being a good friend and an ally in recent arcs. But this is played more for humor overall. Like, I don't think it's building up to like a rematch between them or anything like that. No, it's just some friendly competition and trash talk and just a real good time. Also, Kon is here, and I love Kon, and I'm glad that the anime didn't remove him from this section like it took out his reintroduction earlier. But now it does have him muscling up very randomly because they took out that scene. Oh well, at least he's here and he is adding his bit of humor. I'm still a little sad that he got brought back kind of unceremoniously in the anime. It's fun having him here to kind of just bounce off of Ichigo and Renji. I just love seeing him, and he does kind of become, I wouldn't say important, but there are things that concern him that I'll talk about in a little bit. And I'm honestly just glad that Renji is part of this at all and trying his best to keep up with Ichigo. As someone that grew up with Dragon Ball, I'm very familiar with rival characters falling behind until you almost forget that they were ever a rival at all, and I'm glad that doesn't seem to be happening here. Like, sure, Renji isn't being as impressive as Ichigo, except for later during the Asauchi test, but he's still staying in the race at least, you know? He's still keeping up in the story. He's still training with him. He doesn't feel like he's just completely sidelined. But honestly, I can't help but think about what Renji would be like right now if Byakuya really had died during the invasion. Renji would be pushing through grief and the weight of impending captaincy, but instead, he doesn't bring up Byakuya at all. Like, sorry to harp on that point, but I can't help it. Not when Renji could have been having an underlying emotional journey right now, you know? Sure, it might make us lose some of this fun he's having with Ichigo that I also love, but I think it naturally would have given his determination to get stronger a lot more oomph. Oh well, it is what it is, you know? I'm not too salty over it, I swear, but I just think it would have added a little something to Renji here. He's still dealing with the loss of defeat. He's still dealing with the fact that the Soul Reapers all got beaten and he wasn't strong enough, sure, but that little extra emotional turmoil would have just, I don't know, it just would have made this a little better for him, for me, I think. I loved the little ways that Kubo was showing just how strong these two are now, whether it was Tenjiro getting hurt when he punched Ichigo, or how the other people working in the spring needed to wear protective suits not to get burned, while our heroes were acting like this wasn't a big deal at all. I loved that so much. It was all a fun way to give these characters a little reset, to start this journey of recovery before they were sent to the next palace. And the next Squad Zero palace belonged to Captain Hikafune, which had a focus on food. It's just this banquet hall to eat in, and after the healing tubs, I knew right away that this place was going to also be helpful in their recovery, unlike Ichigo, who didn't get that at all. So Renji had to explain that the food was to help their healing and their preparation for more training. You know, you gotta get fueled up. But I'll give Ichigo a pass with not understanding this right now, with how much is probably on his mind, between the guilt he already feels for arriving late to the fight and processing what he heard about his mom, which greatly affects his own view of himself. It's obviously quite a lot to deal with right now, you know, so I'm not gonna say he was being super dumb. I'm thinking he was just, his mind was on other things. Like, I really did like where some of this was stemming from, that Ichigo's guilt and his desire to want to be able to help the people he couldn't help before is weighing on him heavily while he's up here. Naturally, internally he's feeling like it's not right that they're enjoying this incredible meal and they're just having a relaxing, fulfilling time, while everyone below is probably doing rigorous training or maybe are being attacked again. He can't count on Squad Zero to be like, hey, the Cerate is under attack, let's send you back down there, when Squad Zero didn't jump to go help them before, you know? So for all Ichigo knows, shit's already going down again, and he's up here not involved with any of it. It feels right that he would be very kind of concerned about all that and feeling a bit bad about it. Like, I think that's what was really blinding him when he was eating. On the surface, coming to the Soul King's palace so far has been nothing but relaxation and rejuvenation. It's unorthodox and deceptively chill, so it's taking him a minute to like see the bigger picture. And it was funny that Renji was the one that pointed it out to him, because Renji loved the guy, never been known for his wisdom. You know, he's never been known for his wisdom. He sees what's going on. And Hikafune is a bit of a wacky character, like most of Squad Zero has kind of turned out to be so far. I talked before about how it's a little disarming that they're so eccentric despite being royal guards, but I think this is a situation where they seem this way, but then can get very, very serious when they need to be. Hikafune's passion for food was obvious from her introduction, so it makes sense this would be her palace's purpose and what she's good at and what is going to be helpful to them in their eventual training. I compared some of Hikafune's surface level vibes to Big Mom from One Piece when I first saw her, and I feel a little bad about that now that I know a bit more. Like, yes, there are some similarities, but the core of their characters kind of couldn't be more different. Big Mom is a devourer, whether it's food or souls or her own children, whatever. She's gluttonous, whereas Hikafune seems to be the person that spends her time feeding others, you know? She makes sure other people are fulfilled and stuffed and enjoy their meals, whereas Big Mom would have eaten this whole feast before Ichigo and Renji even had the chance, and that wouldn't be enough. It would never be enough. I think Hikafune is kind of more like Sanji, if I'm gonna compare her to One Piece characters. Just a little less obsessed with love, probably. Her body transformation was surprising, with how her weight fluctuates based on her spirit energy, and she used a lot to feed them, but that made sense given what we learn about the meal as a whole. They didn't just eat normal food. The food was full of spiritual energy inside of it that helped Ichigo and Renji in their recovery, which was really interesting, but made a lot of sense once we learn what her focus actually is. It isn't really just about food. It turns out that each member of Squad Zero has brought something important to the history of the Soul Society. You know, they've contributed something, and her contribution was the creation of temporary souls being able to be put into the body, which eventually led to mod souls. So we have her to thank for my boy Cone. As difficult as his life was early on, she was the reason that mod souls were ever a thing, for better or worse. So yeah, that's why she was brought into Squad Zero. So it seems like these members each did something important and then are given great power by the Soul King to be as strong as they are once they become part of the squad. So anyone down below, I assume, like any of the captains, could develop something or come up with something that earns them a place up with the Soul King. So maybe that could explain why there are so many ambitious people, you know, like Mayuri. Maybe he hopes someday one of his experiments will earn him a place where they'll be like, that was genius. But I also don't know how much he cares about that. I don't think he really would care about that, actually. Maybe he'd think that joining Squad Zero would stifle him and would be a little too close to perfection. By that same token, though, maybe part of Aizen's motivation for all of his experimenting with holification was him trying to create something wholly unique that would garner him an invitation to be welcomed to the Soul King's palace and to join Squad Zero. He did seem interested in the squad, but he also had already started the holification experiments before he heard about Squad Zero, I think, based on Turn Back the Pendulum. So maybe not, but it could have been part of it. He was trying to get there, and when they didn't recognize his contributions, maybe he decided to try to find another way to get up there. I don't know. My prevailing theory right now when it comes to contributions that let someone become part of Squad Zero is that the Soul King specifically has an interest in Ichigo and wants him to come up there because he wants to recruit him into the squad. So hearing all this about contributions, I wondered if being the potentially first amalgamation of Soul Reapers and Hollows and Quincy's would earn Ichigo a place solely on the basis that he's bringing something to the table that no one else can. But also, he didn't really intentionally do that, obviously, so I don't know. That's just my theory, that he's a potential recruit for Squad Zero based on how unique he is. Ichigo and Renji's next stop is to go to the palace of Nemaya, who is called the Blade God, which is just one of the coolest epithets I've ever heard. That's just the coolest thing ever, the Blade God. And Nemaya is pretty fascinating right off the bat. He stood out before for me for a really weird reason because of how he didn't actually have any moment to say anything during Squad Zero's introduction, but we very quickly see that he's not typically a very quiet person despite that scene not having him in the conversation. And I love this guy. He's just fun and lively, and the juxtaposition between how casual he is compared to his importance to the Soul Reapers is really interesting because he's responsible for the creation of Zanpakuto, which was insane to hear, but doesn't at all seem like some stereotypical ancient powerful being. He's just this guy that has fun and cares about his swords and apparently cares about how people view him because he has a whole fake palace full of fake women. And by fake, I mean women who are actually swords. He's got great energy and his characterization was clear as hell from the moment he started talking. And it's interesting seeing Zanpakuto spirits personified so casually in this place. Like typically we've seen them only in like the minds of their wielders, like we've seen Zangetsu in Ichigo's inner world. I desperately need to see this man wield his sword in battle though, considering how much he knows about Zanpakuto. I would imagine he's a great duelist, right? Like, you know how Will Turner in Pirates of the Caribbean was a blacksmith, but also spent a lot of time practicing with the swords he makes? That's how I picture Nemaya. I was thinking while reading it that his assistant might actually be the spirit of his own personal Zanpakuto. She stands out among all of the other Zanpakuto spirits around. The whole test that Ichigo and Renji were put through here was kind of crazy, with being faced with the Asauchi spirits that can become Zanpakuto and how they're angry at Ichigo and Renji for the condition that their swords are in. It's just this really kind of horrifying setup. They're dropped into this pit of darkness with all these seemingly hungry, murderous creatures. Like, these designs for the Asauchi are really creepy, like mannequin-looking guys with mouths for eyes. These drooling mouths where their eyes should be. And Kubo loves doing that sometimes, apparently, putting mouths where they shouldn't be, you know? I still think about those chains with mouths from way back. In like the first Urahara unlocking Ichigo's power segment. I still think about that, and these guys have that energy. And it's actually kind of a similar thing when I think about it. Like, Ichigo's dropped into a pit, being kind of assaulted by things with mouths for an extended period of time as he's stuck down there. There's just an interesting parallel there, and I didn't think about that till just now, and that's really cool. But yeah, there's a question posed here of who is superior, Soul Reapers or Zanpakuto, and it reminded me a bit of Ichigo's inner hollow when he was trying to take over Ichigo's body. He talked about kings and horses and which one is which, where there's a feeling of trying to rein in power that's actually really also your own. It was similar to that whole thing, which makes sense, I guess, because that was also Ichigo gaining control of, power that was inside of him, and this is kind of a similar vibe, trying to reforge his Bankai. But after 3 days and 3 nights of fighting these things and trying to not get eaten by eye sockets, I guess, Renji is told that he passes the test, while Ichigo fails because he wasn't chosen by an Asauchi. And the idea is apparently that Renji has proven he's a Soul Reaper while Ichigo hasn't, and the implication I think is that it's Ichigo's Quincy side that's making this impossible, or maybe based on what Nemaya says later, his lack of understanding of who and what he really is what makes him fail. He's got to go back to his roots and understand his past, but the part that really interests me is when he said that knowing his roots means he might never be able to return to the Soul Society. Like, could it be a truth that would make Ichigo turn on the Soul Reapers? Were they involved with with his mother's death? Or will the knowledge of his Quincy origins change him on a more physical level? Will it unlock more Quincy-ness, you know? I don't know. But I'm so excited by this, and my fingers are crossed, every single one of them, that we're finally going to get some answers about Ichigo's past, and with his mom, and especially Ishin's past. But it was also worth thinking about how Ichigo didn't get his Zanpakuto in the most traditional way, like at all. And that's becoming very apparent, and is making me think a lot. Like, yeah, he got his powers from another Soul Reaper, and then immediately had his own Zanpakuto that was completely different from Rukia's. He didn't have to go through the same thing that other Soul Reapers do to get their Zanpakuto. He never had an Asauchi. But this scene also made me think about, wasn't it Tozen who took the sword of his dead friend? So did he have to like reform a bond with it that was more his? You know, because the Asauchi are like molds, it feels like, and then your own power kind of bonds with it and it becomes something that's related to you. So I'm a little confused by that, but I don't know, I'm sure there's lore explanations, or I just haven't found out yet. But Ichigo failing just as things are really starting is a great obstacle to contend with, because it was so unexpected. We got all the way up here to the Soul King's palace, you think this is going to be a big arc of training and recovery, and then Ichigo gets the boot. So it was just, I was not thinking he was only going to go to a few palaces and then get sent home. I'm curious to know if this would still have happened this way if Ichigo hadn't just learned the truth about his mom, because that obviously has shaken him and made him question his own identity. Like I said before, his lack of knowledge about his roots seems to be very important to all of this. And with the way the anime episode ended in particular, I'm hoping we're finally gonna get some answers on that, because it seems like we really need to know now. And I can't wait if that's the case. I want him to go into that shop and just ask his dad point blank, what the hell happened? Tell me everything. That's what I want. This was all just fun world building that went along with the Kenpachi fight, and despite how that was much more hype for me, there were still plenty of interesting things going on here. It's a great start to this training and recovery up in the Soul King's palace, unless it really is the end of that, but I doubt it. I think Ichigo will be back. Yeah, we'll see where it leads, because I'm hoping it leads me to finally get some answers that Ichigo also desperately needs, and then we can go right back and he can hopefully reforge his Bankai. But yeah, that'll do it for now. I'll see you all soon to see where this all leads. As always, thanks so much for watching. Please comment, like, and subscribe. If you want to support the channel, we do have a Patreon where I do read-alongs of the manga, as well as react to the Thousand Year Blood War anime episodes. I also just started watching Demon Slayer on Patreon, and I will be reading Hunter x Hunter pretty soon as well. You can find all that on the Patreon. Thanks again. I hope you all have a great day. Take care.